Hello and welcome to episode 21 of Carry On With Carrie podcast. Today, I'm so happy to welcome Lydia Duncan to the show.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? How's it going?
Really good, thank you.
Good. I'm so happy to have you here. Just so for some information about Lydia, she's a certified life coach with the International Coaches Federation and the Co-Active Training Institute. She's an empowerment coach and the CEO of Lydia Duncan Coaching.
Yes, it sounds so fancy.
It does. And it is. You've worked really hard to get where you're at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a journey.
Yeah, and it's inspiring to me. We were just talking before the podcast about, the last year and how far things have come and the successes that have come. I know you were kind of in the middle of training when I met you.
Yeah. I started training in COVID.
Okay.
And I think that the opportunity wouldn't have presented itself except because of COVID, because everything went virtual.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to go in person to train because my husband at the time was working in Singapore for weeks at a time, and I was single momming it while he was away.
Yeah.
So a little silver lining of COVID is that it really opened up virtual opportunities.
And I wanted to quote you from your bio. I really loved how you put it. I felt like life was happening to me, capital T-O. Can you just expand on that a little bit? And I know it's so relatable to other moms and other women.
Absolutely. And I feel like no matter what position you're in life, whether it's a parent or CEO, you can feel like you made decisions at one point in your life and that sent you on a trajectory. And then all of a sudden it feels like you're not making those decisions anymore and it's just steamrolling you.
Yes.
And so you have lost control, but you feel guilty because you made the choices to make your life as it is, but you're not as happy as you think you should be. But then you think, well, I shouldn't be happy. So it's like so many layers of guilt happening. And you feel like you have no control. You feel like you're lost. In that case as well, too, like my husband at that time as well was working offshore. So I didn't have control over his schedule. There's lots of stuff that you genuinely don't have control over, but I lost sight of what I did have control over. And I think that was really highlighted when I spoke with the life coach, just as like a little consultation call. And she asked me, what do you do for fun? And I had no answer.
Yeah.
And it made me so sad. Like, who am I? Like, I know I'm a mom. I know I'm a single mom like Louie's at work. Like, but what do I do for fun? Like,
right.
What do I value? What do I enjoy? And
Well, I think so many women can identify that way because you do start to literally identify yourself as, who are you? Oh, I'm a mom. It's like, well, yeah, you are. And that's an amazing role. And it's so much responsibility. And it's like one of the best jobs you can ever have, I think. But that's not all you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's reconnecting with yourself, with your identity of who you are outside of the role as a mom or a partner or an employee or someone's sister or daughter. It's out of those external roles. Who are you at your core?
Right.
What's your core self?
Yeah. Well, and I found it I love like looking back at, so you have a major in sociology and a minor in psychology.
Yeah.
So you've kind of taken all of those things and then put it into this side of it. And so what my understanding of life coach is, and can you explain kind of from your perspective of what is a life coach?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a broad term. And there's lots of people that have specific niches, but on the whole, your whole life is connected. So whether you're a business coach, a development coach, a relationship coach, all of those aspects of your life are connected. So at the base, it's a human coach. And what I like is looking at your thought patterns. So I've been trained in ways that really provide a safe space for you to learn about yourself and explore your maybe limiting beliefs, your perspectives, your fears and your worries and your obstacles that are holding you back from building and creating and living a life that brings you happiness. And I think that at a foundational level, a lot of people don't even know what they want.
Yeah.
So just giving yourself you don't get, in day-to-day life, you don't get the opportunity to spend an hour with someone where you just get to talk about yourself with no judgment, no bias, no advice. It's just you talking it out, getting asked questions that sound rhetorical, but I actually want answers to.
Right. Yes. Accountable.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So,
but in a positive, you mentioned pushing the envelope with love.
Yes.
I liked that.
Yeah. So, because we were talking about kind of a typical session, and when I meet with clients and they are bringing up the topic that they want to talk about, whether it's a difficult conversation coming up or they just can't seem to get done what they want to get done, we'll be talking, and I might suggest, okay, well, we've been talking about how you want a website, but you haven't done it. Like, let's talk about the fears or the thoughts behind that are limiting you. And then I might push the envelope and be like, I want you to build a website by our next session next week. And they might be like, oh, that's a hard pass. Like, I can't do it. Yeah. But then we open up the negotiation, and it's what they commit to. So they're like, well, I might do research on 5 different websites and bring it back to you. Yeah. So
more realistic.
Exactly. And I'm not going to ask you to do anything you don't want to do or hold you accountable to something that you don't want to be accountable to, because it's your time. It's your life. You know what's best for you.
Yeah. So there's not that pressure by next week or next month when I meet back with you that there's shame or guilt attached to that, right?
And that's something I love too. Like, I kind of love it when clients don't do homework or what they committed to, because
that's a lesson too.
There's so much to unpack there. Yeah. It's so interesting. And there are so many aha moments that can be really enlightening and empowering, because we really look at what thought patterns are there that are established in your brain. And thought patterns are like muscles that you can grow. So it's learning how to grow and build stronger, more empowering thought patterns. And that's why, like, meeting with a life coach over and over again is like going to the gym over and over again. You're building those muscles.
Right. Building the muscles in your brain.
Yeah. And I love it. Like, that, and my hope is that after I'm done working with someone, they then have those muscles throughout their whole life to check in with themselves, to know what their values are, if they're shifting, making sure that their actions in life are aligning with those values.
Right. So you say that, and so when you start the process of life coaching, it's probably a little bit more regular and more often. And then is that something that over the years you can just kind of check in with you?
Yeah.
Just to, I think I'm forgetting a little bit I'm getting off track here.
Yeah.
Right.
It can be kind of like grounding sessions. Like I met with a client last week, and we hadn't met for about a month. And she was like, I totally lost track of my goal just in that month. I'm so glad that I had this space to recenter and refocus on what my goals are. And now we've come up with action plans, and I'm going to do all the things.
Yeah.
So once we have a relationship, then, you can do check-in and grounding sessions, but it's really good to get in kind of a habit. That's how thoughts are formed, is your habit. So it's really good to maybe meet once a week.
Right.
It's ideal.
And okay, so in correlation to your mental health, I mean, we all know organization, keeping things cleaner, goals, all that stuff is recommended to have a healthy mind. So can you kind of put it into like clients that come to you to begin with that really are struggling, kind of the process, like, I know everybody's different, but how does it correlate to mental health?
Yeah. So I believe that coaching is kind of like a third element of mental health, where on one scale you have a therapist or a counselor where you're looking at your past and you're trying to heal those parts. And then on the other side, you have like your friend that's like, oh my God, same here. Like he was rude. So I'm so glad that you didn't text him back. But in the middle, where you need someone that's unbiased, and you need someone that sees you as fully formed and, resourceful, that helps you move forward without judgment, without bias. I meet a lot of people that, especially people who are overwhelmed or like chaos in your mind.
Yeah.
And you just don't know, like you have no direction. You feel like you're stuck and lost and not even confident in who you are or what you want in life. Like it's like, I even just talking about, like, I can like feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so offering that safe space also means offering a sense of calm. And I like to start slow, where it's more grounding and just like talking about life right now. Like, I really like doing an exercise called the Wheel of Life.
Okay.
Where we go through about 8 categories, but it can depend on each individual. 8 categories of life. It could be relationships, it could be health, it could be spirituality. And how happy are you with that right now? And let's talk about that. And what are the challenges there? And what would bring you from feeling like a 4 to bring, what does a 10 look like to you? And just start thinking calmly about what an alternative there is. Because a lot of people don't have that time to think of alternatives, to sit down and think of what they really want.
Right. And I mean, you can read all the books you want, but I know for myself, just having that somebody personally right there, making you accountable, helping you be like having a friend go to the gym with you. It's accountability.
Yes.
Right. And it makes it a little bit more fun. I think.
Yeah, I like to think I'm fun too. So
and you are. Well, when you sent me your bio, you're like, well, how did you word it? My extravaganza. Yes. And I love your words. Yes.
It's hard to write bios about yourself.
It really is, but that's also like, yeah.
And like doing something like that, writing a bio about yourself, it's almost an exercise in self-compassion. So it's, removing yourself from negative thoughts that you're having about yourself and thinking, what would my best friend write about me? What would my colleague write about me? And doing it from a place of love.
Right.
So, and that's something to do even when you've made a mistake in life, and you're beating yourself up about it. You're like, wait, what would my best friend tell me?
Right.
And kind of tying that. And that's part of your inner resources that I really try and highlight, being like, that lives in you. That's your core self. That's something that you can reach and you can go to every single time and be like, oh, I don't look good today. And be like, well, what would my girlfriend say? She'd be like, oh my God, your butt looks amazing.
Yeah, exactly. You rock those jeans.
I know, right?
And okay, I hope it's okay if I bring this up, but when I went to write stuff out, I'm like, Monroe Coaching. And I noticed you changed it to Lydia Duncan Coaching. And that's great, because it is more personal. People can find you. But I just remember, I love the story about why you called it Monroe Coaching. Is that okay to kind of touch on?
Absolutely. Because names are really important.
Yes.
And I love the name Monroe. And it's the Scottish term for a mountain. I think it's over 5,000 feet.
Okay.
And in Scotland, people try and bag Monroes. So they try and hike as many Monroes as they can.
Yeah.
But Scotland is where I grew up, even though I grew up locally here. I moved to Scotland when I was in my late 20s after I finished university and college. And it's where I met my husband. It's where I got married. We got married here and there. But anyway.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's where I experienced married life. It's where I had my kids. It was where I really came into who I was outside of being, the daughter of local family, of being the sister of a local guy. Like, it was where I really got to explore who I was. But it was also where I burnt out.
Right.
And I didn't even know that I was burning out because it wasn't on my radar, and burnout is sneaky.
Yes, it is. It creeps up on you for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of honor my life, because I spent, just over 10 years there before moving back to Canada. And I wanted to honor that, that person, that existence, that experience. But then I have kind of expanded on that, and it came to my mind that I wanted more ownership of my coaching life. So that's why I switched it to Lydia Duncan Coaching.
Right.
Because it's who I am now as well. So it was really interesting. And honestly, I was a little bit scared to name it Lydia Duncan, because I was more findable and I was more accountable, and I couldn't hide behind an abstract name anymore. I was like, this is me. Yeah. And I want you to find me because I can help, and let's chat.
Yeah. Well, and it's the reason I bring that up is I have a calligraphy company, and I had it named Lettering by Carrie, and then I switched it to Rusty Lane Lettering, not to, little name drop there. Anyways, I don't do that really as much as I was. It's on hiatus for now. So what I'm trying to say is, being relatable to somebody who does go through those changes, and that's part of the process. Like if you're starting your own company, you're starting down a new path, it might start off here, but the end, you're ever changing and evolving, and that's okay.
Yeah, giving yourself permission to change your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the hardest things, especially for women, I think. Well, for men too, but in my experience, because it is, you think that you've made a decision, you base it on facts or feelings, or you did all the thinking, you made a decision, and then there's so many fears and so many beliefs about what it means if you change your mind, and like, oh, was I lying before? Have I changed? Is this worse? Am I putting someone out by changing my mind? Is a big thought too, or I shouldn't, and lots of the shoulds.
So, okay, that actually leads us into, can you give us some advice to people or moms that are experiencing burnout? So you've got, I know you mentioned the 7 steps.
7 types of rest.
7 types of rest.
Oh my God, I love rest so much. It is it's the hero. But burnout, I was doing lots of research about burnout, because it wasn't until well after the fact that I realized that I had experienced burnout. And it was kind of the symptoms or the signs. There's twin sisters that wrote a book about burnout and stopping the stress cycle. They're like Dr. Emily Nagasaki and Amelia, her sister, but they said that there's 3 signs. You got emotional exhaustion, so like you care too much for too long. You have decreased sense of accomplishment, so like, what's the difference? Like that's where like you're going to bed at night and you're dreading the next morning because you're like, what does it even matter?
Right. You know? Yes.
And then the third one is depersonalization. So you don't have as much empathy or compassion, which really sucks when you're a mom and you're like shouty mom is what I was.
Right.
So a shouty mom, I was going to bed dreading the next morning, and I was just like sad, and then sad about being sad. And
then guilt.
And then guilt. Yeah. So, those, they can show up in so many different ways. But doing that research, they were talking about being stuck in a stress cycle. So back in the day, you'd get stressed out if a bear was chasing you. Makes sense. And then the bear you'd run away and you'd get back to your village and your people would be there and you're like, this is what happened. And they'd be like, oh my God. And some of them may hug you and you'd be like, hey, you're safe. And you'd be out of the stress cycle. Yeah. But I guess in Banff, we do have some bears.
Yeah, we do.
But in your day-to-day, you don't have those bears, but you still have that stress coming in. Even if it's like looking on Instagram and someone is taking an outing with their kids and you can't even do the dishes that day.
Yes.
There's things that are adding stress to you that never get resolved. So you're sticking in this stress cycle. And so like that can have adverse effects on your body, on your mind, on your relationships in every way. So the key is completing that stress cycle. So finding ways that you're running to your village and saying, the bear's not here and I'm safe, and telling your body that you're safe. And I found really, really interesting different words for kind of the same thing when it came to what these women suggest in their book for completing the stress cycle, and what Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith suggests for the 7 types of rest.
Okay.
And so taking part in any of the 7 types of rest is like restorative. It's not just rest where you're just sleeping. Although physical rest is one of the things. And I love physical rest because they say there's like passive and active. So you can go to sleep, but like, the feeling when you could sleep all day and you still aren't restored.
100%.
Yeah. And so it could mean that you need active rest. Like it could be like yoga or anything that gets your blood circulation. But she comes up with 7 full types. And so there's social, emotional, physical, creative, mental, sensory, and spiritual. Those are like 7 different like categories of rest. And there's actions you can take within each of those that kind of help you complete a stress cycle. Right. And actually restore you. It's not like escaping from your life. It's integrating them into your life. So you are
giving yourself permission.
Yeah.
To take those. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially like, if it's, in your work life and you're like, I'm going to take 10 minutes to practice mindfulness, or I'm going to take 10 minutes to walk in nature. I'm going to mute my phone when I get home. That's a big one too. Like that's
huge right now.
Yeah. You have sensory like overload, and that's huge, especially for moms who are getting touched out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like your kid is on you all the time and you feel bad being like, you need to get off me.
Yes. And I love that you are so open to talk about that, because I think moms think they're alone in that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And there's days that you're like, what the hell did I get into here?
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's these visuals of what moms should be. They shouldn't be shouty. They should be open all the time. They should martyr themselves.
Yeah.
And you feel guilt if you don't. And
it's all on your shoulders.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And one of the rests that is recommended as well is emotional rest, where you don't have to put a filter up anymore. And you can say like, yeah, my kids are driving me crazy. I feel like I want to run away, without someone being like, oh, call social services, where it's like, I see you, I get you. And it's wonderful when it can be, you know, a community of other people that are like same.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's
so, okay. I want to ask you this, and maybe this will be a challenge for you, a
exciting.
Goal setting. Have you thought about doing workshops?
I have thought, but I'm very scared to do workshops.
Are you? You're so good at talking, and I know I've been in your meditations before. You've led meditation, and I just I could definitely see that as being something that would really, just give a lot more information to people.
Give people like the gift of rest.
Yes.
Oof, maybe that's like my goal in life.
Yeah, because it does make so much sense. It's something like all these things that should make sense to us, but you know, you really don't learn it. We're all just like muddling along in life, and unless it's taught to you, you don't know.
It's so true. And you were talking before about like self-help books and stuff like that. And you can read something, but then you close the book and then you carry on life. But I'm kind of like a person who is a self-help book, because I reiterate things that like, oh, you forgot about this, and like, where's this coming from, and have you remembered to practice this? And so it's that accountability, that personal connection to remember and learn and practice. So well, challenge accepted. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I'm going to commit right now to say there will be a workshop, and to look out for it being hosted at Balance Wellness.
Perfect. That's awesome. Oh, yay.
This is exciting. It's such a beautiful venue, and like their whole vibe there is about holistic health. So you can see everything from a life coach to psychologist to an acupuncturist to masseuse. And they have a really like warm, welcoming space that's like natural light, and
it really is
all those things.
It's a beautiful space, and they have crystals in the walls.
Do they?
They do. Yeah. So as soon as you walk in, you're like, oh, I feel this vibe.
Yeah. It's lovely.
Yeah. But Claire's wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
well, I was just saying too, we were talking about, I reached out to Drew Barrymore on Instagram. She was a drinker, alcoholic, and she's very open about it. So I was like, you know what? Why not just try this out?
And what an exciting time of your life to be at, to be like last year, I don't think that would have been on your radar at all. And now you are a person that's like, oh, my people are reaching out to Drew Barrymore's people. Like, let's see what happens. Because even if they come back to you and say no, you're like, well, her people told my people no. Like, that's incredible. Like, and you don't know unless you try.
Yes.
And like the fear of failure is one of the saddest things. And that's something that I talk to a lot of clients about too. Like there's so much fear that you stay small, right?
Yes. You don't take the chance. I mean, and that's what I was saying too. I mean, Drew Barrymore started somewhere. Everybody that's, you have to start somewhere, and whether or not it gets big or it doesn't matter, as long as I've always said one person at a time. If I can reach one person, get a follower a week, reach those little goals, because that's also something like people. So again, with social media, say you are on, you've said, okay, here's your goal. Do you have goals with social media, with websites, like all that kind of stuff as well, that is specific to a business? Or
it's always specific to the person. So I've worked with business owners before that feel overwhelmed. Like what I'm thinking of one client in particular who felt overwhelmed with having to produce content.
Right.
But it was what she wanted. Like, we did some deep dives into her thoughts, feelings, beliefs. And she's like, yes, I do want this. So I with love, pushed the envelope and was like, hey, well, will you do 3 posts? And she's like, oh, nope. Like, I'm going to do 2 though. And then we kind of like, okay, well, what steps do you need and what support do you need in order to do that? And so we broke it down into like little baby steps. And I love baby steps so much because the world's overwhelming.
It's so overwhelming. 24 hours. There's 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
Right. And there's always one tomorrow.
And you don't get more time and you don't get more energy.
Right.
So those are your non-negotiables. What is negotiable is what is your priority at any given point in the day or week. So deciding what you want to prioritize and deciding what you're going to prioritize goes down a level to what is important to you, what is valuable to you. And with this client, she wanted to share information about her service and how it helps people.
Yeah.
And so that's her why. So breaking it down to sharing and helping others made it more tangible and more realistic. And then being like, okay, well, you need to block off time. You need to get this person and that person. You need to make sure your phone's charged. Like,
and owning that how amazing it is that you have this, that you have this to offer, right?
Yeah.
Like standing behind, like giving you the confidence.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I remember my previous coach telling me, when I was scared to kind of put myself out there, she was like, who are you to deny people what they might need? And that's true in providing services. It's true in being like your true self as well. And, speaking with intuition or reaching out to a friend, like, I don't know if they want to hear from me. Who are you? You might be exactly what that person needs right now.
Yeah.
Go do the thing.
This is what I love about the way you explain things, because it's so relatable. Like, it's not just about, I have a podcast and I need to get famous on Instagram. It's all about like, okay, well, I'm making supper today, or I need to reach out to a friend. Yeah. And that's how simple life really is.
Yeah. Because life, I think it's Emily Dickinson who says that life is composed of a series of nows.
Right.
And that's so beautiful because that's all you have. Like, you don't have, the past has already happened. The future hasn't happened yet. All you can do is do what's right now based on your values. And it leads to an amazing life when you're doing that with intention.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody about saying 100%. Like, I say it a lot. 100%. I'm going to start saying 1,000%. I don't know.
But why stop there? Why not 1,000,000,000%?
Right?
Yeah. See what kind of like names for numbers you can make up. Like a quadrillion%.
Great. Okay. So talking, I know we talked about kind of like moms, new moms, like younger, going through that, the kid phase. But I know for myself, I have grown up children, and it's been this year has been quite a challenge for me to get through. Is like empty nesters. It's a thing. And, you've defined yourself as a mom, and then all of a sudden they're leaving and going, and it's like, okay, what are my goals now for myself? Is that something like, have you experienced some women that come to you with this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I've like, there's empty nesters, like it's the transitional points in life. So empty nesters, people going through divorce, even young people like finishing high school. Who are you now that you're not a student? Who are you now that you're not in that clique of friends? Even moms who have kids that are now in full-time school, so they don't have their kids home. They have all this time. So it's the commonality between all of them is that you have changed identities, or those identities and those roles have become a smaller part of your day-to-day life.
Right. Yes.
So you do have more time. And I found in COVID too, people had a lot more time to start thinking about, who am I? But I think when you're in a transition, it can either be really exciting or incredibly daunting and scary. And when I've worked with clients in the past that are in that kind of transitional phase, it's again, bringing it down to the small bits, to like, how do you feel right now in life?
Yeah.
Where do you want it to be better in your life? And what's important to you right now? Because it changes as well with different phases of your life. Different things are important. And I think especially like empty nesting, it's making sure that you are feeling like you're part of a community. I'm not you in particular, but in general, it's making sure that you still have that connectedness. And for a lot of people too, it was through their kids that they had their social engagement. So it's
Oh yeah, for sure.
finding those connections and bringing that joy, finding what juices your goose.
Yes.
It's pretty important.
Awesome. I love that. Juices your goose.
That's true. Everybody's got to find the juice.
That's right.
And that's the thing though, like it sounds flippant and funny, but it's essential to living a life that brings you joy. If you don't know what your juice is,
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to juice your goose?
Yeah.
And you only have one goose.
Mm-hmm. Right. I love it. And so how would you walk somebody through that? Just to give an example, like say I come into you and like our first session, what do you I guess it would be getting to know you kind of thing. But can you give an example of starting a goal like the first week or something?
Yeah. Because like we'll have had a consultation call beforehand, which is always free. And I'm not a salesperson, so it's never salesy.
Yeah. And
so we'll
it's
have
no
that.
pressure though. That's
Yes,
what I love.
Exactly. Because again, I don't know what's right for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's right for you. I just help you find that out.
Yeah.
So if it's not right for you right now, that's cool. And maybe it's right for you in 3 months or never. That's fine. Or someone else is right for you. It's cool. But so we'll have gotten to know each other that way. You'll have filled out a questionnaire that kind of helps you to reflect on yourself and what you do want and what your biggest challenges are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we meet, it is kind of going over, what your reflection was on your satisfaction in life. And then we talk about like kind of visioning, like, okay, well, say if we're going to work together for 6 months, what do you want your life to be like in 6 months? Like what generally, but then also day to day, what do you want to be doing or not doing anymore? And a lot of times that's, making decisions with confidence. It's setting boundaries. It's communicating. It's even like I've worked with people that are like, I just want a hobby. That's all I want.
Yep.
And that's like a whole thing.
Oh, it's huge. Hobbying is like serious business.
Yeah. And it's like, because it can be daunting in itself too. And,
but it can lead to more as well.
Exactly. And
right?
There's something about finding a hobby that's not necessarily about the thing that you're doing, crocheting or, woodworking. It's prioritizing yourself, knowing that you're worthy of time, worthy of learning, worthy of being an apprentice, and changing your mind if you try, diamond painting and you're like, that's not for me, and trying something else, and feeling the fear and doing it anyway. We were talking about how it's fun to do things that make you nervous.
Yes.
And finding hobbies is like, there's so much under every goal. There's so many layers of depth that I know how to investigate and help you learn about.
Yeah.
But so it's finding that overarching goal. And so we'd be like, okay, so 6 months from now, this is your life. Cool. That's going to be our goal.
Okay.
And then and we might go like, okay, well, what would you have to, if it's a very specific goal, like if I'm working like in a business capacity, it could be that they want a certain amount of income or, growth or something. So we could look at that more analytically and be like, hey, well, 6 months from that, or 6 months from now, that's what you want. What about 3 months from that? What about 2 months from that? And like really go into nitty gritty little goals. But what is great is when it is a little bit more abstract, like finding a hobby. Every time the client comes to me and they'll bring what is on their mind that week.
Right.
So they might say like, oh, well, I was just overwhelmed and I never, did the thing I was meant to do. And I'm just been hard on myself the whole time. So like, okay, so after this session, how do you want to feel? And you might be like, I want to be kinder to myself and I want to go do the thing.
Right.
It's like, okay, let's work on that. So and then we'd spend that session looking at, what kind of beliefs were there? What kind of thought patterns were you having? Where are your internal resources? What would a best friend say? Or what are your values that you weren't honoring? Like, why were you mad? Is it because that person was not respecting you and that's a huge value for you?
Yeah.
Or what needs to shift where you can focus more on what brings you joy? So it's a whole session of that. And then getting, steps to achieve that goal. But then I have in my heart and head, their big umbrella goal of what they want after 6 months. So I'll still redirect it that way and make sure that whatever homework or practices or whatever they're committing to doing between sessions is going to help them get that much closer to that goal, to the big goal as well. So it's little goals and big goals.
Right.
The goals are scary.
They are.
Because there's having the time and space and courage to dream up a goal. And then there's the fears of not achieving the goal, especially if you tell people about your goal and then you change your mind, which is a scary thing to do, but brave, or you don't do it. Like, oh, what does that mean about me? Like, goals are scary and huge. And you see, especially on social media, you see everyone at the done point of their goal. You don't see the progress. You don't see
the behind the scenes, like, oh, the furnace just turned on in the middle of a podcast, or the truck just drove by with a really loud engine. Yeah.
It's true. But then you can also like flip it on its head and appreciate the amazing quality of microphone you have here.
Right? It's like it picks up everything.
It's true. But it is perspectives as well. So it's, oh no, like someone's gonna hear that stuff, or this is the bad stuff that's happening and I'm trying to achieve my goal. But then you, especially working with someone that can zoom out and say, like, what about this element and how does that, and you can see different sides of the same coin, and one side is sometimes shinier and you're like, well, that's nice. I like the shiny coin.
I like the shiny side. The dull side's okay sometimes too.
Well, sometimes it's too shiny, it hurts your eyes, so
that's
you do need to flip it over. I get it.
And you need to rest.
Yes, exactly. Put the coin down.
Yes, exactly. There we go. So one thing I wanted to ask too, so have you worked with businesses? I know, like, just a team building or that kind of thing that gives those goals within a company.
Well, I've done like a lunch and learn, which was really enjoyable, but it was a little bit like speaking into a void because it was virtual. But I loved it because people could be eating their delicious food, and I'm passionate about food.
Yes.
And I was explaining about values and how to learn your own values so that you can start taking actions that align with those values. And that's going to be what helps you build a life that brings you happiness.
Right.
But I would love to do team building. I think that would be so satisfying as a coach, but then to affect an entire atmosphere and environment of workers that are in close proximity for the majority of their year. And to take away the dauntingness of goal setting, whether it's within work, but work and personal life are intertwined all the time. Like if you're stressed at work, you're not being the best person at home.
No, so the balance, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And finding out where you need to communicate that better, where you need to set boundaries, and what are your goals. You can have goals with boundaries and communication. I think it would be fascinating to be working with offices and teams to really help them strengthen that skill, because it is a skill, goal setting.
Oh, 1,000,000,000%.
1,000,000,000, nice. Getting up there. I like it.
No, I really do think that and that's the thing, it can be tough with, depending where your work atmosphere is, it can be a division of, well, you've got the kind of like the office, you've got the warehouse crew and you've got the office crew kind of. And it's like, how do you bring that team together and help? Because communication is key. And I think a lot of times when the communication fails, that's where the goals get put aside and it gets off track.
Yes, absolutely. And I think in that kind of office situation, I think to bring people together in any situation really is finding out. I keep on banging on about values, but finding out what everyone's value is and seeing which values match up with others. You'd be surprised by how much overlap there is. And when you find that you're communicating the same value in different ways, that gives so much more understanding. But I wanted to touch on values quickly, because what even is a value?
Right.
I say it oh, whatever. But I remember when someone first asked me what a value was, I was like, do you have a list? I don't know. And I have made a list. I call it Lydia Duncan's big old list of values.
Oh, nice.
It's 100 values and I give it to clients or anyone. If you want to message me, I will send it to you.
Okay.
And it is, what's important. So it's everything from, professionalism to compassion to financial security, to travel, to freedom, to there's so many, and it's the things, it's like the guardrails on your road of life. So it's showing you, it's kind of directing you where to go. And if you find yourself, crashing into your values and you're, stepping on them, it's going to be a rough ride. But when you are in line with your values, those guardrails, then life is really smooth. And those values are leading towards, the life that you want.
Right.
So they're really simple once you know what they are, and they'll shift, at any given point in your life, what's most valuable and what's most important to you. But they're your why. And there's so much power in knowing what your why is.
So much. And, I see TED Talks in your future. I do. You're so articulate with how you explain things. And again, so relatable. And because to break down a value, I mean, it sounds so simple again, but those are the things that it's sometimes the most simple things that we're the most confused about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes you think like it can't be this simple, but like all of life is made out of like tiny little elements. Yeah. So even like the goal setting, I break it down into tiny little elements. How to live a happy life, break it down into tiny little elements. And your day-to-day is tiny little elements. Like even one of the first things I did that really started to shift my burnout and my sense of no control was exercising for myself. But there was so much guilt because when do I do that? Do I put the kids in front of a TV? Oh no, I'm a bad mom, blah, blah, blah. So, but then being like, I am worth doing this for. I am worthy of time for myself. And also I can see my why. If I get strong and healthy, I can be a better mom. I can be a better human, and I can live longer. Like everyone wins, but knowing that why. And it was that gradual progression of being like, I am worthy to prioritize myself in this one element. It's now transcended. And I don't have, like, I still have to work with mom guilt. Like, I think that will always be.
It's always there.
In me.
It's our society too.
Exactly.
Right? It's indoctrinated into us almost.
Yeah. Yes. So it's a thought pattern that, and a belief system that's been really, really well established. And so it's a constant trip to the gym to strengthen that muscle in my mind that is saying that I'm worthy of rest, that I am teaching through example, like role modeling what's doing stuff that's important to me, to my kids, and even to my husband and my family and friends, like to be like, oh, look at them. Like they're doing their thing.
Yeah. They're doing a thing, and maybe they're doing the thing because they saw that you can do the thing.
Yeah.
Right. And you led by example.
Yeah. And that's like, and again, it comes back to like, who are you to not do the thing when it could help someone else and you don't even know it?
Yes.
And there is, because almost all of us make up stories about what other people are thinking and feeling. And that's, I did a post about being a socially awkward penguin last week because I was, and I like kept on thinking about a thing, assuming that someone else was having all these thoughts and feelings about it and it meant something about me. But if you're going to make stuff up about what other people are thinking or feeling or believing, you might as well make up something positive.
So, right? Yeah. Like you have that choice.
Exactly. And choice is such a big thing. Like, we have choice over our thoughts, but most people don't know that. You have an event, and then you have a thought about that event, and it initiates feelings. And then based on those feelings, you take certain actions.
Right.
And then that sounds simple in itself as well. But even that awareness and remembering it at any given time, like this is why, like you can read that and you're like, oh, cool, that's really interesting. You put the book down and then you forget it. But if you work with me, then every single week we're talking about that and we're going through that kind of pattern. Yeah. And then you start to become more aware of it when we're not in sessions. Yeah. And that's what I want. I want people to be aware of their thinking, knowing that you have control over it. You have power, because that's the one thing you do have control over. Like there's all the things that can happen. You can't control someone else's schedule. You can't control anyone else's anything. No. But you can control your thoughts.
As a personal development coach, have you had any clients or anything be able to, like, are you able to offer any assistance with financial, is it covered on any plans, that kind of thing, naturopathy and all that?
That's a great question, because you know what? I don't want there to be financial barriers to mental health. And I have had a client claim it under her wellness account. So it was under her education and personal development category. Okay. So there are possibilities for some people, depending on what they have access to. Yep. But I also do offer working on a sliding scale. Okay. Because depending on your level of commitment and your budget, we can have a conversation. I'm impossible to offend. So if you're okay with having a very open conversation about what is feasible, what it would take to make a real commitment, then we can discuss it. But it's having that conversation. I want to make it available to people because it's so important.
So important. And mental health, that's unfortunately one of the barriers I find is finding the help if you don't have the finances. And why should it be unreachable?
Yeah,
absolutely. And you can still there's resources, but it's not, let's be honest, it's not always the best resource for you because there's so many different ones to choose from.
Absolutely. And there's, like working with a therapist might be covered, but you might not need therapy.
Yeah.
Like you might just need someone to take you as you are now and help you move forward. And I've worked in tandem with clients that also work with a therapist. Like I have one client that sees me one week and sees a therapist the next week. And she loves that because the therapist kind of puts her in her past and helps her to heal.
Yeah.
And then she meets with me. And we take her as she is now and we make steps for forward movement.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful balance.
Oh, I think that's perfect. And speaking of that, like finances, I know you said you want to start like opening up more about finances. And that's part of like, I know, budgeting and getting the goals surrounded around money, because that honestly, for a lot of people that I know, is such a stress and causes the mental health issues. I mean, right now, especially the economy, everybody's struggling. People that you don't even know or you would never think they're struggling are, So is that something that you do touch on as well?
Yeah, there's a whole belief system around money. But what's interesting is that money it's so real as well. Like as much as it's made up in some ways, it's also incredibly real. And it's, it's at the basic level of it, it's your security, it's your safety. And for a lot of people, that's huge values there.
Yeah.
And if you have dependents, that's super important. And then there's other elements about like trust in the universe. Like, do you think that things do work out? Like, are you an optimist? Are you hopeful? And there's a difference between, an optimist hopes that, or an optimist has faith that things will work out better and it'll be okay. But someone who's hopeful has the belief that they can take action that will make things get better.
Right.
So do you have either of those, emotions in you or action points in you, and how to work with those? So it's all related, like that financial worry and uncertainty. What stories are you telling yourself? Does that mean about you? What are your beliefs? What are your thought patterns? What are you in control of right now?
Yeah.
And even just having that safe place to be like, I can't tell my husband, I can't tell my kids, I don't want to tell my best friend. I'm just going to speak to you. This is a safe, non-judgmental place to be like, this is my worry. These are my fears. And sometimes just articulating it, there's so much power in saying the words,
right,
and being heard.
Yes. So it's you kind of mentioned a safe place to talk to somebody non-biased. So confidentiality with coaching, is it similar to therapy?
I think so. It's our, my agreement is that everything is confidential unless I think you're going to do harm to yourself or others, or you are breaking the law. So it's pretty simple. But I do also, if a client talks to me about self-harm or trauma or something that's out of my scope, then it is, asking them what their support system looks like. Do you have a therapist to reach out to? And that could be something that I ask them to do before the next session too. It'd be like, I want you to reach out to, another mental health practitioner, or it might even be at a point that someone does have so much unresolved trauma that they can't move forward.
Right.
So at that point, it'd be like, this is wonderful. We're going to put this on pause. And there's different specialized skills that you could use with someone else.
Right.
So like, I know I'm not a therapist. Yes. I know what my training is and what my scope of practice is. And at the end of the day, I'm in an industry and a service where I want what's best for you. I want you to thrive.
Right.
So let's make that happen.
Right. And that's a goal in itself for somebody, if you, and the fact that you're honest and true about that to a client, this might not be for you yet. You're not quite ready, but that's a goal to reach towards.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So I want to ask you, I know I always kind of move all over the place here.
I love it.
But I ask everybody this, what is the last best thing that you do at the end of your day
It's reading. I
reading?
read to fall asleep, and I didn't last night, and I could feel it.
Okay.
Because I love it. Like, it relaxes my mind. It puts me into like a world of my choosing.
Mhm.
And I think that, like, I've always been a reader, and I think reading helps you be more compassionate and empathetic because you learn different people's thoughts and
Mhm.
experiences and lives, and whether they're made up or a document or a biography, you know, you're learning about other worlds.
Right.
And I lay in bed and I read, and it's my time.
You're unplugging.
It's not for anyone else.
Mhm.
It's for me, and it's delightful.
Love it. If you could leave the listeners with just a couple of things like that you would suggest, even just for a Saturday or, to get through your day, what can you give a little bit of insight?
Well, I'm
Put you on the spot there.
I'm gonna bang on about rest.
Okay.
So do things that restore you today, little bits. It doesn't have to be huge, daunting tasks. You don't have to go on a 3-hour hike. Look at a tree for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And just notice the details of the leaves changing color. Look at your cup of coffee and the way the steam comes off of it. Or put your phone on silent, even just for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So many things you can do, or like call up your friend and actually have a conversation. So I'm just touching on a few of the different types of rest too, or, take 5 deep breaths.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And even when I was first learning about being a little bit more mindful and resting, I put reminders in my phone a couple times a day that was like rest. And I was like, oh, right. And even if I was driving and couldn't do so many things, I could still take like 5 deep breaths, and it just resets you. It's
a great
the power
idea
of breath. So that is helping you build that thought pattern, build that thought habit.
Mm-hmm.
And you need help. And so if technology can help you by setting a reminder on your phone, do it. Take the rest.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, this has been so wonderful.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fun. I just, you're full of a lot of really good information and hope. Like, that's how I see what coaching does. It's hope.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I will take that and run with it.
Good.
I love it.
And you're an amazing soul. You've got such a good energy. Can you just explain to the listeners, where can we find you?
Yes, so I'm on all the socials. So I started dabbling
in TikTok.
I know, it's very exciting. So I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Lydia Duncan Coaching.
Okay.
I got my website, lydiaduncancoaching.com. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But Lydia Duncan Coaching. That's why the name is that powerful.
Yes.
Personal name now.
And they can go, that's where they would go to book or to contact you.
So if you want to get more of a sense of like my personality, because it's a very personal thing, coaching. If I don't jive with you, or you are like, oh, you're too much or too little, then we could still meet and I could help you find someone that maybe is on a better like wavelength for you.
Yeah.
Or better specialty or anything. I'm happy to help. But getting a sense of my personality on my socials, especially TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
And then if you go to my website, like you can message me directly through there too. I will message right back. But on my website, there is buttons to book a free consultation.
Okay.
So the calendar will come up and you can just book it yourself, find what time and day works best for you.
Yep.
And again, like they're totally free. Super no pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, honestly, just the consultation, like I've had people cry in consultations because they just feel seen now and heard. And like there is that stress cycle. They're releasing that wave of energy that has been like choking them.
Stuck inside you.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can get me anyway. But website has all the things, has like lots of questions answered. I tried to make my frequently asked questions really clear and like not jargony.
Mm-hmm.
But if you read all that and you still have questions and you don't want to even have a consultation yet, you can still message me your questions.
Okay.
It's just easier to answer those questions if we have a chat.
Exactly. So, yeah. And you will love the chat that you have with Lydia Duncan. She's an amazing woman and has so much to offer. Thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to share and be so honest and true about everything.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. I've had a wonderful time.
Awesome. So you can give me a follow on if you feel compelled to. I'm on Instagram at Carry On With Carrie podcast _podcast and Carry On With Carrie on a podcast on Facebook. And if you feel compelled as well to give me a follow on Spotify, I would love that. The support means so much. And if we can just get this and sharing to one person at a time, I hope you all have a great week ahead.